feedback to @GraceKuriaKE at KTN News KE. The question is right there on your screen, and there's a lot of feedback that I'm getting, which I will be sampling in the course of this discussion. But as I mentioned earlier on, my guests are already with me in studio. Mr. Pithon Bushoki, he is a community organizer at Vijana Uongozini. Susan Wangari there, she's the secretary OSYAC, right? That's the Orthodox Christian Youth Association of Kenya. And Mr. James Morra there, the chairman OSYAC, which again is the Orthodox Christian Youth Association of Kenya. Karibuni. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
I'd like to start with the same question that we are asking our viewers today. I want to know if your aspirations were covered by this Building Bridges initiative. If I would start with you, Mr. Bushoki.
Thank you, Chris. To a large extent, they were captured. Actually, the report says that us as young people, we feel left out. And so that's an admission that indeed the young people have been left out. And it also captured the issue of unemployment and also the issue of inclusivity as young people. So to a large extent, yes, it has captured. It also talked about us as a nation lacking the ability to nurture talents. And it gave examples of the likes of Kina Eliud Kipchoge. And so to me, to a large extent, yes, it was captured. But I expected more in terms of the solutions that they were giving in regard to employment. So yes, they gave general solutions, but I expected detailed affirmative action in regard to employment. So I expected maybe something like in every, let's say, parastatal, that you have at least 30% who are young people. So it just gave general solutions, but it didn't give the specific solutions towards the issues of unemployment. Yes.
Susan?
Well, they do admit the fact that they have not covered the youths as much as we hope that they would. And the fact that they do agree that we are the largest population, especially when they compare us with other nations in the world. The fact that we are majority of us, around 20% of us are the youths, but they do not really address the issue at hand and the roles that the youths are supposed to take up, and whether or not they are really going to incorporate that in the working of the system, and how exactly it is going to work for us. Yeah.
Mr. James?
I think the answer to that question is to say that it is relative. And this is the issue. We have done this even in the past without a report being blended, BBI or anything. They have given us these promises, they've told us, they've promised us everything, but we don't actually see it happening. So I believe that if these things are implemented, at least half of the way they are said, then it means that we are heading somewhere. I think we should come up with solutions now, not plans to a solution. I think that's what is missing.
What are some of the solutions that you'd like, sir?
Okay. Myself, what I would say, as a head of an organization, I think we should narrow down some of these things. Like, let's think about unemployment. Unemployment, for example, like 55% of Kenyan youth are unemployed. If they are not unemployed, they are underemployed. This is to mean that you are not doing something you trained for. You are just working to pay your bills. That is the Kenyan people. And in our organization, as a church, what we are doing is that 90%, like my church, we have priests. The Orthodox Church of Kenya, we have priests. Right now, His Eminence like Bishop Macarius has been ordaining young priests. Actually, we have less than 35 years of age priests right now, a lot of them. We are getting people who are young to work in our institutions, in our colleges, in our schools. Those are actually practical solutions. You know, if we promise heaven to young people and we are not showing them that we are actually giving them, Just look at the nominations that are being done. It tells you that we are actually building bridges on papers. Thank you, Grace.
Building bridges on papers. But at least to be fair, we had, the CS, Zach Kinoth here, and there's that madam from our coast whose name I forget.
Abdallah, somebody.
Yeah, I actually did a story on her, but, just to be fair, right?
Yeah.
Pethan, you mentioned also some of the solutions, the same thing that Mr. James here is talking to us about. What is it that you'd have liked, to be included in this report?
Yes, just to take from where you have just pointed, I think that the nominations were 7, and they were CS, the Chief Administrative Secretary. And I think we had a lady from Embu. She's called Anne Nyaga, and she was a CEC Agriculture in Embu County. And so, to me, I think that's a plus. And as I said before, affirmative action, that how are we holding or mentoring these young people, because we want them to be in places of leadership, but we have denied them the opportunity to grow. So I will give an example. There was a report by the Public Service Commission that said that a majority of the civil servants are aging. So we have over 50% of civil servants who are 46 years and above, 46 to 53 years and above. So it tells you that even if I was to be employed, I have not been mentored. We have old people who are still working, so I will not even have the qualification, I will not have the experience even for that. So we will experience a gap. So I think there is a lack of planning from the government side. Another solution, I'm so passionate about sports and arts, but I feel the government has no idea as to how it's going to use sport or give a platform for young people. In high school, I was a drama student, and you will find thousands of drama students who clear high schools, and then from high school, they're nowhere. They become teachers, and teachers saying it's not a bad thing, but that's not where their passion is. You find talented and skillful football players, but after high school, they just get lost. So I think in terms of sports and the arts and film, the government hasn't done enough. There's so much creativity with the young people in terms of writing, in terms of ideas, sports, but the resources that are being allocated to the young people, they're too little, and there's nothing much that we can do about it. So in regard to sport and arts, I feel that there needs to be, a budget and resources allocated towards, these talented students. A few years back, there were, talent academy schools, but because of corruption, they just ended. And so there's an opportunity, and the government has tried, but I think they can do much more to help these young people who have talents in arts and sports.
I'll be coming back to you, Pethan, but Susan, we've talked about unemployment, and I mean, each time there's a youth somewhere and we're addressing issues that affect the youth, unemployment is almost always the first thing that, they mention. But apart from that, what else would you have liked, addressed in this report that concerns the youth?
For starters, I think the major thing that would have contributed to one of the greatest challenges we have, which is unemployment, is the issue about the education system currently. We feel that the education system is not par as to what we would like it to be, because at one point the CS will say that the market is flooded, the courses are repetitive to some extent. So it is a challenge to have educated minds, which the youths are greatly educated. We have the largest population, which is half of them do actually have even their master's level. So it is a system that people go to school, but they have nothing actually to show about it. So I think it's something more for them to narrow down on the education system, not per se as the government, because we need also other institutions to come in place. We need the church to come in and set up something for the community that is there. I would give an example with the organization in the Orthodox Church. The Archbishop Makarios has done several things to set up institutions like the Orthodox College of Africa, where he ensures that they are hands-on experience on whatever the youths are doing. They're involved hand-on-hand. But when we go to higher education in the government, that is not practical enough. And that is one of the things that is lacking to an extent where they do have internship programs rolled out like in the PSC, which it is taking off. But the amount of work that is being required for you as an intern to work in and put in for you to match up to the level of the one who has been in the public service for around more years than the ones you have, you are required to work extra. You are required to learn more. So I think the education system is something that they really need to look into.
Yeah, that's actually a really valid point there. I think I should have started with this. They said they consulted about 7,000 citizens. Were you guys part of the 7,000?
No.
Unless they were invited.
You were not. You were not.
No, yeah.
You
No,
were
I
not.
was not.
Okay, me too. Okay, I'd like us to talk about how sometimes the youth are used, especially by the politicians. You know, we're usually so united, but then especially now 2020, as we draw nearer to 2022, that's when you start seeing divisions. And we are the people who are used. I mean, someone says that they are okay, their families are okay, but when it comes to fighting for them, we do it. Why is this? Are we that idle again? We now come back to the unemployment issue, because if I had somewhere, you know, I should report, say, from 8 to 5, then I don't have any reason to go out and campaign for so-and-so on a weekday. So does this narrow down to unemployment still? And why do we have to be used, you know, to fight for these people who don't even know us?
I can...
Yes, you.
Okay. I will give an example of the rural areas. What's an niseme mashinani? As for us who are educated, who are privileged, the youth who are privileged, who have had a good education, at least we are able to think for ourselves. And I think God has blessed us enough to be able to reason. But I will give an example. Go to a place like Embu, uko mashinani kabisa. You'll find guys who have dropped out from class 8. You'll find many young people who are just idling around. And so they are the vulnerable young people. And so when, as you have correctly said it, when that time for election comes, they are the ones who are being used. So what we are trying to do as a young organization called Vijana wa Ghazini is to basically go to them, because in Kenya we don't have a civic education, a framework to educate the electorate on matters of leadership and governance, or just to enlighten the people and tell them that, hey, Article 1 says that all the power belongs to the people of Kenya, but we don't know it. So that's one of the challenges, that they lack that, you know, enlightenment of, you know, even though we don't have money, we have the numbers, and we are able to put one of our own. And a good example is the MP, I think, from Meru, the young MPs. Yes. So I think that society is a bit advanced, because they are not looking at what the politicians will give them. And so to me, civic education will work, and also just empowering the young people economically, so that they are not used by these politicians. Because 2022, it's usually very exciting that you know that you are in the campaign team of a big politician, and it excites you completely, and you forget everything about values, about what they stand for, because when you're given like 5,000, 10,000 shillings, Grace, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So I think it's, the honors is for us young people. to just engage our fellow young people. It will be easier because we speak the same language. And I think maybe it won't happen overnight, but if we are consistent and persistent, maybe in the next few years we may have sober leaders, and the issue of division during elections will be a thing of the past. Yeah.
Susan, I'd like to get your thoughts on that, and also as you answer the question that I asked, tell us, is it that some of the youths are not interested in, say, politics, in, say, things that really affect them? Because even if I could just sample some of the feedback that I'm getting from the question that we asked today, just allow me. Some people say, Manze Grace, I'm just chasing money, the rest I don't care. Big Boy Bond says BBI is for them, not for us. Very unfortunate. Someone says it's a scam. James again says no, because we asked whether your aspirations were covered by the BBI. So someone else says, no, BBI is a big scam going nowhere. Ernest Mananga says BBI is for old people, only the youth were neglected. I mean, almost similar, views regarding this. Is it that we're not interested? Also, as you answer the question that I asked previously.
I don't think it's a matter of being interested or not, because it's a matter that affects us directly. At one point, you have to have an interest in it, whether you are voicing it out or not. Right. I think it's a matter of how much you're willing to actually exert yourself upon it, because at one point you feel like you have read it, you have seen there are several issues that are concerning some things that you wish that would be covered, but you are not asked about it. You do not have a voice in it, you do not have an opinion in it. So that is why most of them tend to think that it is a scam. It is not for us, because we are not in it. I think it's also not, I do agree, civic education has not been up to standard in this country, but it is not wholly a matter of civic education, because we as the youths, we do not need to have a political seat for you to feel you are a leader. We are here because we are leaders in every sector that we are in. So I think it's a matter of having to have the youths and let them understand that I do not have to be in a political seat for myself to have a voice. I need to stand and be unique in my own way, in where I am, in my community, make a change. We have diversity in the youths, make sure that I can be able to embrace his opinions. I can be able to ensure that no matter what his opinion is, can be able to work with him. At the same time, it doesn't mean that I should lower my standards to the extent that I can be used at any point. Also, it needs to reflect not just to our morals. It needs to reflect even to who we are as the youths, whether it's spiritual, whether it's even whether mental. In every aspect, I think we need people to stand and people to have the right mentality about everything, including the fact that we need people who are not easily swayed with everything. We need to stand and say, this is our time, and this is what we want, this is how we are going to go about it, and not allow anybody else to come in and interfere with anything that we deal with. Yeah.
James, what do you think? And also, because, in the rallies that we've seen, the BBI rallies so far, the forums rather, it's mainly been the same politicians whom we saw at the Bomas of Kenya talking about this thing. Rarely have we seen, the youth being included, or even just a common one, and she doesn't even have to be a youth. And this is some of the issues that people have raised. And of course, we'll also be on the lookout today in Narok to see if someone else will be involved in this conversation, because it has been, the same people saying the same old thing. What do you think, James?
When you want to bring out something which has inclusivity, recently I watched, they had invited Kotu, they invited all these other groups to speak about it, but I don't know about the others, but I think no youth group was invited, because I would say let the youth speak for the youth. We know our problems, we know how to deal with them. because it takes somebody in the ground to really say what you really need. We have adopted a slogan that is called, "These are the times and we are the people." This slogan is the slogan of our organization, the OSIAC, to make sure that we remind our young people that this is their time and they are the people to take on the leadership of the country. Not necessarily, they will not be given on a silver platter. It will require them to prove. It will require us to prove that we are actually capable of being in the positions. And again, if any organization of the youth was invited, then I would agree that our voice has been aired, because it is sad. It is really sad when somebody speaks about you and you've not been given the chance to talk. In any organization, and this does not begin from the government, I think we need to change even the upbringing, that we give our children the right to air their opinions. It doesn't have to be accepted, but at least you give your son or your daughter the chance to express his or herself. And I can tell you that it is possible, Grace. It is possible. Where I come from, the church we come from, I can say it's a very patriarchal church, but the youth have been given the chance to make suggestion even on the leadership structure of the church. I think we are a very special church because it is only us who we are allowed to make decision for the church as a country without involvement of any other person. This is possible if we empower our people from the very way we raise them. I mean, these are the times and we are the people. I think the whole country should adapt to that. Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
Python, in your capacity as a community organizer at Vijana wa Ghazini, I'd like you to talk to us about some of the changes, that probably have been brought about under, your leadership or by Vijana wa Ghazini, because Susan and James here have been talking to us about, the OSIAC. I hope I'm pronouncing it right.
Yes.
Right? So talk to us about that.
Okay. And just to add to his point and what you had said, we have the same faces in these rallies because this is politics, and let's not run away from the politics. First of all, I don't believe the BBI is a scam. Because, number one, if this document, we will take it as young people and say that regardless whether they implement this BBI or not, we shall implement it in our own time, because it's a beautiful document, Grace. Talks about national ethos, talks about family, talks about, teaching young people about values and volunteering. But the same faces, that's where there is a barrier and that's where there is a challenge. And my biggest concern is the implementation process. So us as young people at Vijana wa Ghazini, part of our work, as I've said before, is number one, to educate the society and to tell them of their rights as voters, and also to train and equip young people who are leaders. So we've conducted leadership classes for prefects in high school, just preparing them and teaching them what a good leader is. Because you realize that leadership starts at an early age. And so these people don't change. So if I am a leader in high school or university, and during campaigns I give bribes, I will duplicate the same when I am a member of parliament. But if you teach young leaders the issues of integrity, the issues of hard work and humility, I believe that when they will be governors or senators, they will still uphold the values that they have been trained on even when they have been young. So we equip young leaders and we also train them. So we are planning to hold a forum. It's called Forum for Young Aspirants. and to teach young people who want to vie for political posts, to tell them that, number one, you need to have a campaign team, that number two, you need to know how to mobilize resources, because they'll be going up against people, you know, establishments. They have money, they have the name, they come from big families, but we encourage them and to tell them, don't fear. Maybe you won't get it the first time, but you'll get it the second time. And so if we have such leaders in the next few years, I believe that Kenya is going to be transformed. And if they don't implement the BBI in this time, those young leaders shall implement this beautiful, brilliant document.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll come back with you, Pithan, and I also have a question for you, Susan. But I'm told we need to take a break. But before that, let me just sample a few of the feedback we're getting. We're asking, were your aspirations covered by the BBI? On Facebook, Ken Cheriot says, no, BBI is for pot-bellied politicians. Youths are hardly given a chance even to speak. Then he says, send me a copy of the document if you wouldn't mind. Have you read it, Ken? You're already giving us your opinion, but it's fine though. Councillor Njohi says, what